Tonight, breaking developments in the search for a South Dakota teenager who disappeared inside the Atlanta Metroplex. 19-year-old Morgan Bauer vanished without a trace over a month ago. This month marks 3.5 years since a young woman from South Dakota arrived in Atlanta, only to be swallowed by the city. Since that day, there has been nothing, complete silence. Today, Morgan Bauer's mother stood in downtown Atlanta, a desperate plea to keep her daughter's case from going cold. We were the first to report last night that 2 suspects in the 2016 disappearance of Morgan Bauer are now confronting a slate of terrifying new charges. Jonathan Warren and Caitlin Goebel are now staring down accusations of murder and aggravated assault. The details are monstrous. She was strangled, her body was hacked to pieces, parts of her were then incinerated in the backyard of a house in Porterdale, Georgia, and the horrifying truth remained a secret for 7 long years after she was last seen alive. On February 12, 2016, 19-year-old Morgan Bauer left Aberdeen, South Dakota, chasing a new life in Georgia with just $20, a couple of bags, and a risky housing arrangement she found on Craigslist. A mere day later, an argument erupted and she was thrown out onto the street. She found refuge in a motel, jobless at first, but later began dancing at the Top of Gainesville Club in Hall County. On the 25th of February, after finishing her work, she departed the club in the company of Jonathan Warren and his girlfriend, Caitlin Goebel. Their story to police was that they drove her 77 miles to Covington, leaving her near a Citgo gas station. They insisted they saw her climb into a green Mitsubishi Eclipse with a man they didn't know. After that moment, Morgan was gone. Her social media accounts fell silent, her phone disconnected from the world. With no immediate evidence of a violent struggle, the case proceeded at a glacial pace. The file remained open, but all leads dried up. Her phone's data, however, told a very different and much darker story. The final signal wasn't from Covington at all. It pinged in Porterdale, nearly 3 miles away. This was Jonathan's old territory. Less than 1 mile from his former house lies Yellow River Park. On February 26, Morgan uploaded a video from that exact park. For 7 years, the police believe she had vanished a day earlier. That single piece of footage shattered the official timeline, and in the background, a chilling detail emerges. A man is standing behind her. His identity was never established. This detail completely torpedoed the story Jonathan and Caitlin had told about the gas station. Then, on July 27, 2023, FBI agents descended upon a property in Porterdale. The home had since been sold to new owners. There, on that land, investigators unearthed Morgan's skeletal remains. The missing persons case instantly became a homicide investigation. Jonathan Warren was apprehended in Los Angeles. Caitlin Goebel was arrested in Illinois. Both were denied bond. Caitlin later broke her silence, claiming she had found Morgan's dead body in a bedroom inside the house. Jonathan pleaded guilty to malice murder, destruction of evidence, and concealing a death, and necrophilia. As part of a plea deal that offered no set sentence, prosecutors revealed Morgan was strangled, and then her body was dismembered and burned. According to the state's case, Jonathan then sexually violated her remains for several days. He was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. Caitlin is still awaiting her day in court. She is facing charges of malice murder, felony murder, and a list of related offenses. 7 years of questions ended with bones in the ground. And still, the full story of what truly happened inside that house in Porterdale remains a source of deep conflict in this case. To understand how this nightmare unfolded, we have to go back to the beginning. At only 19 years old, Morgan Bauer was vibrant, fearless, and desperate for something new. Etched onto her wrist, a tattoo read, "Whatever you love can be taken away, so live like it's your dying day." Her friend Taran confirmed Morgan dreamed of city life. It didn't matter where. She just needed something bigger, something more than the life she knew. Morgan left Aberdeen, South Dakota, armed with only $20 from a friend and a few small bags. That was everything. She flew to Atlanta, over 1,000 miles from home. Atlanta is a massive, breathing entity, intense in a way all its own. It is the South, but it's also a hyper-modern city hurtling forward. Glass towers stand sentinel over quiet, tree-lined streets. The summers are brutal, the sun is relentless, and you can practically taste the momentum in the air. It has that southern warmth, but it moves with the cold efficiency of a major metropolis. You can feel industry, power, music, and art all colliding in a chaotic blend. Midtown is a storm of urban energy, while other neighborhoods offer a green, quiet, calm. People call Atlanta a city of opportunity for a reason. It is always expanding, always growing. It has a ferocious cultural identity and an undeniable influence on modern American music. History is everywhere, but a new generation is actively rewriting the future. At its core, it is a city that never sleeps. Speaking of which, where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are right now? I'm always fascinated to see where my audience calls home. As you record that, I'll continue. The day Morgan left, her mother, Sherry, pressed a penny into her palm, a simple charm meant to shield her from danger. Sherry was unsettled. Her daughter was moving in with a complete stranger found on Craigslist. Without a job secured, Morgan's plan was to find work after she arrived, leveraging a deal she'd made as a live-in housekeeper. The terms were straightforward. She would manage the household chores in exchange for a place to stay, at least until she could pay her own way. But the dream collapsed almost immediately, before she had even finished unpacking her bags. In less than 24 hours, her possessions were piled on the street. An unexplained argument had gotten her thrown out. Defeated but not broken, she found a room at a local motel. Turning back to Aberdeen was unthinkable. After only a day, her resolve to make it work had hardened. A tax refund was on its way, and she clung to the belief that once the money landed in her bank account, she could survive for a little while. With experience as a waitress, Morgan started applying for jobs right away, but a critical oversight brought everything to a halt. She lacked the proper documentation, and her applications were dead on arrival. Desperate, she found work as a dancer at the top of Gainesville Club in Hall County, Georgia, a 50-mile detour north of her intended destination, Atlanta, even though Atlanta had been the goal. On February 25th, after finishing her shift, Morgan left the club with a fellow dancer and the woman's boyfriend. And at that exact moment, when it seemed a fragile stability was taking hold, just 2 weeks after her arrival, she vanished into thin air. Her presence on social media abruptly ceased. Snapchat messages went unanswered. Her best friend, who she spoke with nearly every single day, was met with absolute silence. Her phone was off, or the battery was dead. Her mother, Sherry, explained that Morgan craved freedom. She was drawn to the pulse of a big city, ready to test her own limits. She was chasing a new beginning, a world of possibilities she'd never known. The unknown didn't scare her. In fact, she ran toward it. She had ambitions, a future that was just beginning to materialize. Sherry insisted Morgan was a constant communicator. No matter how busy or how late she worked, a text or a call always came through. It was her signature. She would never just drop off the map without a word. So when the silence descended, no texts, no calls, no digital footprint, it felt profoundly wrong. It wasn't just unlike her. It was impossible. For her mother, that silence wasn't an absence of noise, it was a screaming alarm. And that's what made the situation so utterly terrifying. Because when someone so full of life, with clear plans and a habit of constant contact, simply ceases to exist, it's almost never by choice. It's almost never nothing. I didn't want her to go to Atlanta. It really worried me, her mother admitted. But Morgan does everything at 100%. She was the type of person who committed completely. The Atlanta Police Department's official line was that, at the time, there was no evidence of foul play. Their initial statements were guarded, stressing the lack of any confirmed proof of a struggle or abduction. It was true. She was fiercely independent. True, she was hustling to build a new life, working odd jobs, meeting all kinds of people. To an outsider, her vanishing could have been misinterpreted as a spontaneous choice to start over, a sudden pivot, a new direction, a quiet exit to somewhere else. But this kind of profound silence, it was a deviation from her very nature. She made no contact with her family, ignored every message, left no trace online whatsoever. For a person so socially connected, this sudden void felt deeply disturbing. With every day that bled into the next, the weight of dread grew heavier. Did she encounter someone predatory at one of the clubs? Or did something violent happen inside one of the motels where she stayed? The questions multiplied. Every possibility was scrutinized. Every faint lead was dissected, yet no solid answers emerged. Morgan's face and story exploded across social media, shared by thousands. People who had never met her reposted her picture, sent messages of hope, and fought to keep her story from fading. On Facebook, a group named Missing Morgan swelled to over 13,000 members, becoming a digital vigil fueled by hope. They debated theories, passed along any shred of news, and offered support to her desperate family. But even with a national spotlight, the truth remained buried. The silence stretched on, and the longer it held, the more it felt like a deliberate, sinister act. Breaking news with exclusive details in the hunt for a missing South Dakota teen last seen in the Atlanta metro area. 19-year-old Morgan Bauer disappeared over a month ago. Tonight, we can confirm a high-profile private investigator has joined the case. He spoke exclusively with CBS 46 investigative reporter Karen Greer just hours ago. We just keep going and keep praying that she'll be found sooner than later. The family of 19-year-old Morgan Bauer has taken up residence in a cheap Atlanta motel, turning it into a temporary command center. Her mother, Sherry, traveled here last month from South Dakota, and she is stopping at nothing to find her daughter. Donated billboards across the city display images of the small-town teen's innocent face, but photos circulating online from the Gainesville Strip Club, her last known public location, paint a starkly different portrait of a young woman seeking a dangerous new life in the city. Enter private investigator T.J. Ward, a name that echoes from one of the most infamous disappearance cases, the search for Natalie Holloway in Aruba. His new mission? To find Morgan. The first puzzle was social media, a flurry of activity on Facebook, but no one could tell if it was Morgan herself, her friends, or someone who knew exactly where she was. Even last night, something on her Facebook profile shifted. We're digging into it now, Ward explained, but the page he mentioned wasn't her private profile. That one had gone silent the day she vanished. The chaos was unfolding on a public forum, a digital storm of thousands of comments and supposed sightings. February 25th, that was the day Morgan was last seen, the day her own social media fell silent. She was buckling under immense pressure. And kids today, when the weight gets too heavy, they bolt. They chase the illusion that life is better somewhere else, a fantasy that rarely holds true. And chasing quick cash as a temporary solution is never the answer. The location, Tappa, Gainesville. She clocked in for her shift, walked out after, and then nothing. She vanished into the night. The latest chatter on Facebook pointed to sightings of Morgan near Canton and Woodstock. Ward pursued the lead but issued a stark warning. In a case like this, you assume nothing. This is a grave criminal investigation being handled by Atlanta's homicide unit. The people online need to grasp the severity of this situation. This isn't a game. Ward knew social media could be the key to cracking the case or the very thing that buried the truth. An avalanche of posts and countless people swearing they'd seen her kept investigators working around the clock. But every single tip had to be scrutinized. You never knew which whisper held the answer. And just like anything on the internet, the helpful came packaged with the hurtful. Yes, there was an outpouring of support, but it was poisoned by vicious rumors and comments that were nothing short of cruel. It got so bad, a woman named Cher felt compelled to intervene, pleading for basic decency. She wrote, "This isn't a cautionary tale about a girl who invited trouble or should have been wiser. It's about a young woman who vanished and has every right to be brought home safely. None of the noise matters. She means the world to us, and she is loved without limit, without end. We need the focus to remain on Morgan and on bringing her back." And based on everything police understood, February 25th, 2016 was the day everything changed. It was the date stamped on every initial report. It was ground zero for the timeline. Every moment after she left, that club became critical. Each minute of that evening was dissected, placed under a virtual microscope. But then, a forensic dive into her phone records and digital footprint completely altered their perspective. Investigators began to map out the ghost of her phone's journey, tracing signal paths and triangulating off cell towers, cross-referencing timestamps on her posts. And that's when a critical anomaly emerged. The final ping from her phone was nowhere near where it should have been. It lit up a tower in Porterdale, almost 80 miles away from the club in Gainesville. This wasn't just down the road, not a few blocks away, not even the next town over. A drive of nearly 80 miles takes about an hour and a half. The data point was specific, deliberate. This didn't seem like a mistake. The question was immediate and chilling. Why was she there? Was this her own choice, or was she not alone? Had this been the plan all along? Because a phone pinging in Porterdale shattered the original theory of her movements that night. In that single moment, the entire trajectory of the investigation shifted. What investigators did know for certain was that Morgan hadn't left the club alone. She was with two people, Jonathan Warren and Caitlin Gull. They were the last two people confirmed to have seen her alive. That fact was everything. It locked in her final known whereabouts and identified the last people in her orbit before she simply vanished. Caitlin, a fellow dancer, and her boyfriend Jonathan gave their account to police. They claimed their night with Morgan ended when they dropped her near a Citgo gas station. Their story was that this was the final goodbye. From that point on, they insisted her path was a mystery to them. But the unblinking eyes of surveillance cameras offered no confirmation. No other witnesses emerged. And after that moment, it was as if she had been erased. Her trail went cold, instantly. The investigation that followed was massive, pulling in local police and even federal agents. Witnesses were questioned and re-questioned. Phones were torn apart digitally. Hours of security footage were scoured. Every byte of data was meticulously examined. Yet for all the manpower, the investigation crawled forward. Stories didn't match up. The facts were a tangled mess. One statement would contradict the next. And as the clock ticked relentlessly on, the pieces of the puzzle refused to fit. Of course, the man she'd connected with through Craigslist was brought in for questioning early. It was textbook investigative work. Every new contact had to be vetted, but the FBI never singled him out as a suspect. Officially, there was nothing to suggest he was involved, and that thread of the investigation never became a primary focus. The case grew colder as months bled into one another, bringing almost no new intelligence. Potential leads were scarce, and the few that surfaced would quickly disintegrate under examination. Each tip was a flicker of hope, inevitably extinguished by disappointment. Soon, an entire year had passed, and the frantic search for a missing 19-year-old was grimly transforming into something far darker. An agonizing wait. It's been 3.5 years since a young woman, new to Atlanta from South Dakota, was suddenly erased from existence. Not a single sighting, not a single word has surfaced in all that time. Today, here in the heart of the city, Morgan Bauer's mother took her fight to a community event, desperate to keep her daughter's story alive. This is my child, Morgan. She was stolen from us in Atlanta 3.5 years ago. Sherry Keenan stands on the pavement, pressing photos and flyers of her daughter, Morgan Bauer, into the hands of strangers. You see, there's almost nothing to go on. Morgan's file is a cold case, but the Atlanta Police Department insists it's still active. Keenan clings to the hope that her daughter is out there somewhere, whether in this city or beyond, and that she's unharmed. We pray that she'll see this report on the news and understand that we are still hunting for her, and that we will never surrender. While the Atlanta police maintain an online file for Bauer's case, it has grown stagnant, starved for new information. Morgan's appearance is distinctive. She has gauged ears, a double lip piercing, and is covered in multiple tattoos. Keenan reveals a $10,000 reward is on the table for any information that leads them to her daughter. If you have witnessed anything, if you know anything, please make the call. A single piece of information is all it could take. From downtown Atlanta, this is Joe Hankey for 11 Alive News. 7 years had now bled into one another since Morgan's voice was last heard. 7 years of suffocating silence, of corrosive uncertainty, of a crushing, soul-wearying weight. During that void, life shifted. Witnesses relocated. Speculation flared and then died out. Yet the central, haunting question never faded. 7 years is more than enough time for a tragedy to recede from the public's memory. It's an inevitable pattern. The media finds its next headline. Fresh tragedies bury the old. But for her family, Morgan was not an old headline or a cold statistic locked in some forgotten file. She was thousands of sunrises without an answer, without a reason, without any sense of peace. Something had to break. A fresh witness, a forgotten piece of evidence they needed one solid clue to finally shatter the stalemate in the investigation. Without it, her story was on the verge of becoming another permanent mystery, a file filled with questions that would echo unanswered forever. Until this moment, the entire investigation hinged on one belief, that Morgan vanished 7 years ago tomorrow on February 25th. But our 11 Alive investigative team has unearthed a critical contradiction. On February 26th, a video appeared on Morgan's social media, posted from Yellow River Park. The clip was unremarkable, just a few fleeting seconds of a tranquil scene, of trees and stillness. Nothing seemed out of place. But that footage, which only recently surfaced, detonated the entire timeline. For 7 long years, the world was told Morgan disappeared on February 25th, 2016. That date was etched into the minds of everyone involved: family, friends, and the police. It was the bedrock of the entire case. But if she posted that video on the 26th, it meant she was alive a full day longer than anyone had ever assumed. The whole timeline was wrong. As detectives re examined the Instagram video, a detail they had previously overlooked suddenly leaped into focus. In the background, a man briefly strolls through the shot. His face is obscured, just a fleeting silhouette, and yet his mere presence ignited a firestorm of new questions. Who was he? No one had an answer. A random hiker? Or something far more sinister? That shadowy figure, paired with newly analyzed phone records, forced investigators to revisit two individuals they had questioned years earlier. The final signal from Morgan's phone had come from Porterdale, Georgia, a town previously considered irrelevant to the investigation. Now, suddenly, it was the only place that mattered. Amidst all the years of confusion, a single, undeniable fact had always remained. The night she disappeared, she left the club with Jonathan. That was never in dispute. He was one of the last people confirmed to have been with her. Jonathan Warren and his girlfriend Caitlin Goel had always presented a united front, telling the same basic story. They admitted to leaving the club with Morgan. Then, for reasons that remain shrouded in mystery, they drove her 77 miles away to Covington. Their account claimed they left her at a Citgo gas station, and that was the end of their involvement. Later, their story evolved. They then claimed they saw her getting into a green Mitsubishi Eclipse driven by a man they didn't recognize. This new detail threw the investigation into chaos, making their story nearly impossible to corroborate. But a major flaw had just emerged. Authorities now knew for a fact that Morgan's phone had last pinged in Porterdale, a mere 3 miles from Covington, and the very town where Jonathan used to live. It was a concrete location, a pin on a map, and it directly contradicted their story of a drop-off at a Citgo station. Worse, the Instagram video from Yellow River Park was uploaded on February 26th, less than a mile from Jonathan's old address. This was no longer a discrepancy. It was a direct contradiction. If they had abandoned her in Covington as they claimed, how could she be in Porterdale making a video the following day? The chasm between their words and the hard data was growing too wide to ignore. A chilling new theory began to form in the minds of the investigators, that the three of them left the club, drove directly to Porterdale, and that the night ended at Jonathan's house. With this new evidence, the unthinkable theory suddenly felt disturbingly real. Jonathan was long gone by then, having made a new life in Los Angeles, but that house had yet to be searched, a place whose history could be hiding the answers they desperately needed. From the very beginning, Jonathan and Caitlin had been the central focus of the investigation. And now, with the damning phone data in their possession, authorities finally had the probable cause they needed to get a search warrant. This digital trail was the one missing link, the catalyst that turned suspicion into direct action. 7 years after Morgan vanished into thin air, the Federal Bureau of Investigation descended on the Porterdale property to begin their search, and the agonizing silence that had stretched for nearly a decade was about to shatter. Anthony Walden with the Portowell Police Department. Today we have executed a search warrant. We are currently executing a search warrant. It is part of an ongoing investigation into missing person Morgan Bauer, number 2 South Broad Street. So far, the search has yielded items of evidentiary interest. Forensic teams methodically scoured every corner of the house and the vast property surrounding it. The work was slow, painstaking. Every room was captured in photographs. Every surface was inspected for the smallest trace. Specialists proceeded with extreme caution, step by careful step, to guarantee nothing was missed. The search became an extended operation because this was far more than just a house. It occupied a massive piece of land, surrounded by wide open terrain. The yard, the outbuildings, the most distant parts of the lot, all of it demanded examination. The very ground was excavated in grids. What once appeared to be a simple private home was now being dissected as a potential burial ground. The sheer size of the area demanded a huge investment of time, resources, and unwavering patience. But there was another layer to this. By then, new owners were living in the house. They had absolutely no idea. To them, this was just their home, a place they had bought with no knowledge of its dark past. So, the arrival of Federal Bureau of Investigation agents was a profound shock. Suddenly, the very space they inhabited felt ominous, heavy with a terrible new significance. It was as if the walls themselves were holding a secret no one had ever seen. We do not know if what they recovered is Morgan or if it is something else entirely. They are not really sharing that information with the public. And, of course, Morgan is officially still classified as a missing person. Morgan's mother, Sherry, mentions that authorities have included her in the process as much as legally possible. They have made it very comfortable for me to be able to feel very much a part of what is happening, even though there is not a lot of information that they are able to give me. They have been very inclusive. And amid the torrent of emotions from yesterday's shocking discovery is deep sympathy for the owners of the home, who police say have been nothing but cooperative. My heart just aches for that family, and they must be going through so much, also, and it must be so terribly upsetting for them. And so my heart just goes out to every single person involved at this point. After 7 years, I feel like, in my heart, I sort of already know. If they found something, I am going to do what I promised. I am going to go to Atlanta and I am going to bring my daughter home. For 7 grueling years, Sherry handed out flyers, organized vigils, and told Morgan's story to anyone who would listen. Time and again, she printed that same photograph of her daughter with that same look in her eyes, that same smile frozen in a moment. She went up to strangers, recounted what happened, and begged them to just pay attention, to not turn away. The vigils were never simply about remembrance. They were a powerful declaration that the search was not over. Candles, flowers, brief speeches, all of it driven by a desperate hope that someone might remember something, no matter how small. Every year that passed added to the weight of her grief, but it never once eroded her resolve. She spoke with reporters, with neighbors, with volunteers, with random people on the street, repeating the facts over and over. For her, it was never an obligation. It was the only way to keep Morgan's presence alive in a world that was slowly and quietly learning to live with her absence. I'm not ready to say goodbye until she is found, she insisted. But tragically, this was the point where Morgan's missing person case became a homicide investigation. Up until that moment, a fragile, desperate hope had survived. Maybe some other explanation existed. Perhaps she had just run away. Maybe a message would appear, a sign, any proof at all that she was alive. After that discovery, all hope was extinguished. Her skeletal remains had been found on the property. This was not just another development. This was the final, brutal confirmation. A confirmation of death. The location, once just a point of interest in the search, was now an active crime scene. Every inch of land was treated as potential evidence. Experts worked in silence, carefully documenting every single thing they found, down to the most minute detail. Her fate was no longer in question. All that remained were the chilling uncertainties. How, when, and why. And so, the mission shifted. It was no longer a search for a missing woman. It was now a hunt for her killer. We have breaking news at 9. We've just learned of 2 arrests in a Metro Atlanta cold case that's haunted this city for 7 years. Well, Tori, we've been covering this story for just over a week now, and this is a staggering development in a case her family feared would never be solved. In just a matter of weeks, 2 suspects were apprehended. The captures unfolded states apart. 33-year-old Jonathan Alexander Warren was taken down in Los Angeles. 27-year-old Caitlin Gohl was cornered in Illinois. The vast distance separating them was a stark reminder of how far this investigation had spiraled. But with their arrests, the case suddenly had faces, and it had names. For both, there would be no bail. The court deemed them too great a risk for release as the legal process moved forward, keeping them locked away with minimal outside contact. While the allegations were already public knowledge, Caitlin confessed to being inside the house. She never denied her presence there, but her story was one of shocking discovery. She claimed she entered a bedroom only to find Morgan's lifeless body cold to the touch and no longer breathing. Her account was stark, matter of fact. She maintained she was merely the one who found her. Investigators weighed her words against the cold, hard evidence and the established chain of events. In August of 2023, Jonathan faced formal charges: malice murder, aggravated assault, concealing a death, and evidence tampering. The gravity of the situation was laid bare in that list. Each accusation carried immense legal force. Each charge was a battle prosecutors were preparing to wage in court. Caitlin, for her part, was accused of concealing a death and tampering with evidence. At that moment, these were the charges that defined her predicament. But the investigation was far from over. Future decisions would hinge on more interviews, fresh evidence, and the prosecutor's final review. Last night, we were the first to report that the two suspects in Morgan Bauer's 2016 disappearance are now facing new charges. Jonathan Warren and Caitlin Goebel are both staring down accusations of murder and aggravated assault. But just 2 months later, following a series of relentless interrogations and a grand jury's verdict, both were indicted for murder. The investigation deepened. Detectives pored over old reports, challenged every statement, and deconstructed the timeline again and again. The decision from the grand jury was a pivotal moment. It was official confirmation. The evidence gathered was strong enough to move toward a full-blown prosecution. From then on, the case entered a darker, more unforgiving phase. Jonathan was hit with an additional charge: necrophilia. That accusation was uniquely sickening. It hinted at depraved acts that investigators alleged took place after Morgan was already gone. The language in the legal filings was sterile, almost clinical, but what it implied was profoundly disturbing. Caitlin was indicted for malice murder, felony murder, aggravated assault, tampering with evidence, and concealing the death of another. The list of accusations was staggering. Each count represented a distinct piece of the puzzle that the prosecution vowed to assemble before a jury. Taken together, the charges painted a dark portrait of what the state believed was her complete role in the crime. Prosecutors went on record stating they rejected Caitlin's story, that she had simply stumbled upon Morgan's body. From their perspective, her version of events clashed violently with the forensic evidence and the known timeline. They highlighted glaring contradictions in her accounts and circumstances that screamed of active involvement, not innocent discovery. After he was caught, Jonathan told detectives a disturbing story: that Caitlin was obsessed with forensic pathology and had allegedly voiced a dark fantasy to kill someone just for the experience of dismembering a body. These chilling allegations were entered into the official interrogation logs. Prosecutors would later raise these claims when building a theory of motive, but it's crucial to remember this accusation came from his co-defendant. And like any statement of its kind, it would be scrutinized in court against the full weight of the evidence, his own credibility, and any ulterior motives he might have for saying it. And there, the real war in the courtroom was about to erupt. A tranquil river. It's unbelievable. I'm even saying it's been 7 years. At Yellow River Park, the agony is palpable. It has been a difficult road. This is the last spot where Morgan Bauer's phone ever sent a signal. There are moments I feel so isolated, because it's impossible for anyone to truly grasp what this feels like. But on this night, Cher Keenan is not by herself. And we just ask for grace as these people joined hand in hand, gathered in spirit at a vigil to honor Morgan's memory. My only hope is that this reaches someone. I'm standing here with nothing but humility and a heart full of prayers. It means the world that every one of you came here today. For 7 long years, she has held on to the hope of finding her daughter. Thank you. Clinging to the dream that this nightmare would end in joy. I believe that when we all channel our energy, our wishes, our prayers, our intentions into one single moment, miracles are possible. Jonathan struck a deal. A blind plea with no sentence guaranteed, admitting to it all. Malicious murder, destroying evidence, hiding a body, and the unspeakable act of necrophilia. His future was a blank page. There were no promises, no assurances. He gambled everything, surrendering his entire life to the judgment of the court. He confessed to the gravest of all charges. The whispers of accusation had finally become a public, chilling confession. In exchange for his plea, the prosecution dropped the counts of felony murder and aggravated assault. While certain charges vanished from the record, the sheer gravity of his confessed crimes remained. The deal was simply a procedural formality, but no legal maneuver could dilute the horror revealed in that courtroom. The prosecution began to paint a sickening picture. Their words were stark and brutal. Morgan was choked to death, her body then cut apart and set ablaze. A wave of shock washed over the courtroom as every detail presented was another descent into a deeper, darker hell. Prosecutors then revealed the ultimate depravity. For days, Jonathan had violated her mutilated remains. This single accusation cemented the case as one of unimaginable brutality, defining the very scale of the evil described. Then came a claim that shattered all comprehension. Prosecutors alleged Jonathan confessed that he and Caitlin had consumed parts of her body. Yet, this horrifying assertion was never corroborated, nor was it included in his official guilty plea. It existed only as a chilling statement made under interrogation, never legally entered into the final record. Next, the prosecution turned its focus to the digital world. They presented TikTok videos where Caitlin purportedly explored a dark fascination with serial killers and the occult. This digital trail, they claimed, was a window into her mind, a map of her darkest interests. Whispers of another, more graphic video surfaced, one prosecutors intended to use as crucial context. Rumors swirled that in this footage, she was seen clutching what looked chillingly like a severed head. But this video remained a ghost never released, never shown. No official image ever reached the public. It was a story built on words alone, without a single piece of tangible proof. The prosecution pushed further, seeking to admit a trove of Caitlin's private world. Her social media posts, her diaries, and her personal notes, they paired this with Jonathan's own testimony about her supposed occult rituals and an obsession with death. Their goal was to construct a psychological profile, arguing her obsessions were the key to understanding motive. All eyes were on Jonathan, who was set to take the stand and describe the chilling conversations he witnessed before Morgan's death. The prosecution believed his testimony could be a bombshell, as he was the one closest to her when everything fell apart. But whether his words would build their case or tear it down was a question only the court could answer. The judge held back, leaving the fate of this controversial evidence hanging in the balance. The issue was left unresolved. Some of it might reach the jury's ears. The rest could be thrown out as too inflammatory or irrelevant. Nothing was decided yet. Remember, Jonathan had thrown himself on the mercy of the court, with no sentencing deal in place. He requested life with the possibility of parole, fighting for a distant, theoretical chance at freedom decades from now. But against the backdrop of the stomach-churning depravity laid bare in court, the judge held the power to deliver a sentence that would be absolute and final. The sheer weight of his monstrous acts made any thought of mercy seem impossible. And so, for his role in the 2016 vanishing of 19-year-old Morgan Bauer, Jonathan Alexander Warren received his sentence, life, with no chance of ever walking free. His punishment? A lifetime behind bars. Parole would never be an option. The sentence was pronounced with a chilling detachment, a sterile legal decree, no sympathy, no relief, only the cold finality of the end. And that finality means one thing. He would spend the rest of his days in a cell, with no hope for early release, no second chances, no new beginnings. The steel doors that slammed shut behind him would remain locked forever. For the family, it was the sound of justice finally being served. But justice is a verdict, not a cure for a shattered heart. A verdict doesn't make the pain disappear. It can't turn back the hands of time. It merely assigns responsibility under the cold, hard letter of the law. It declares an absolute end, drawing a line that can never be erased. And a life sentence, with no hope of ever seeing the outside world again, is the most severe penalty our justice system allows for a crime of this magnitude. It broadcasts a chilling message. The crime committed was so monstrous, the damage so absolute, that society has made a final decision to eliminate any future risk. It is an unchangeable fate, an absolute end. And still, after the gavel strikes, a hollow silence remains, because no legal declaration, regardless of its power or finality, can ever bring Morgan back. Tonight, the Newton County District Attorney has confirmed the charges against Goal are still hanging in the balance. The legal fight against Caitlin is far from finished. Her trial is still in motion, and the suffocating tension that surrounds it has not broken. Jonathan, from what has been revealed, is now aiding the prosecutors. He is reportedly preparing to take the stand against her to tell the jury that she was the one consumed by a dark fantasy of murder and dismemberment. That single accusation could become the linchpin of the entire trial, but it could also completely detonate the public's perception of them both. Inside the courtroom, words like those hit with a different force. They feel colder, more brutal, terrifyingly permanent? Will the whole truth ever surface? That remains buried in uncertainty. Some cases are destined to leave only a legacy of questions. Often, the truth is a victim itself, lost somewhere in the fog of competing narratives, plea bargains, and testimony shaped by strategy. And when that occurs, clarity feels like a phantom, forever just beyond our grasp. The people accused in the vanishing and murder of Morgan are now imprisoned, forced to answer to the law. Their liberty has been extinguished. Behind them lies a world of cold steel bars, vigilant guards, and doors that only lock one way. What lies ahead for them are verdicts and solemn judgments. But not even the full force of the law can restore what was so violently stolen. The first sign that something was catastrophically wrong came in February of 2016, when she dropped off the face of the earth. Her phone fell silent. Messages went without reply. Her digital life, once so vibrant, was frozen in time. For those who knew her, that deafening quiet felt alien, terrifying, and agonizing. But the deepest, most crushing silence was the one that lasted for 7 years. 7 torturous years of not knowing, of relentless waiting, of a hope that became more brittle with every passing day. Yet even now, with Jonathan Warren locked away and Caitlin Gohl waiting for her day in court, the complete story may forever elude us. Because even if the answers did surface, they could never fix the one thing that matters. Some absences are too vast to be filled with words from a witness stand. Even if the truth is confessed in open court, even if every last secret is dragged into the light, the unshakable fact is that Morgan is gone. And that is the singular, heartbreaking truth. Her hopes, her entire future, everything she was meant to become, is now forever 19 years old. She was denied the chance to live the life she was just stepping into. Her future was annihilated at the exact moment it should have been taking flight. At its heart, Morgan's story is about a young soul who craved a grander life, one filled with profound change and boundless adventure. She was searching for herself in a world far from home. She lived without fear. She stared into the unknown and didn't blink. She relentlessly pursued the life she imagined, even if it meant torching the map of her old life and stepping into a world with no safety net, and marching toward a future she would build from scratch. In her, determination burned brighter than fear, as if she held an unshakable conviction in the story yet to be written. Morgan's stepmother, Leah, once gave voice to an impossible reality, saying, "Morgan has now been gone from our lives longer than she was physically present in them." A single sentence, yet it holds the crushing weight of years of pain, years of stolen holidays, birthdays celebrated in silence, and an empty seat at every family meal. She continued, adding, "Everything that was taken from Morgan was taken from us as well. We were robbed of the chance to see her navigate adulthood, to watch her become the woman she was meant to be. Her brothers were denied a lifetime of knowing their sister, not just as kids, but as grown-ups. This is a devastation that ripples far beyond the loss of a single life. It's the annihilation of a future of memories that will never be made, of conversations that can never be had, of a family bond that was violently severed. Then, she was forced to confront the monstrous truths unearthed by the investigation. That is all we have left, she said. And those are words no parent should ever be forced to utter. It was as if a final judgment had been passed on reality itself, proving that sometimes the truth brings no solace. Sometimes it is just another unbearable weight. At a memorial vigil, surrounded by flickering lights, her mother shared, "In the glow of these candles, I see reflections of the light my daughter brought into our lives. She was a brilliant source of pure joy, of infectious laughter, and of a love that was given without condition. And tonight, as we gather with these flames, let them stand for the warmth of her very soul, a warmth that continues to radiate within our hearts. The light that was my daughter may no longer be a flame we can see, but it thrives in the memory of everyone who loved her. So today, let us honor what Morgan stood for by making a pledge. To live with the same deep kindness, the same empathy, and the same joy that she shared so freely with the world."